So welcome everybody. My name's Rolfe, and our webinar today is how to develop resilience. And resilience is the ability to bounce back after some sort of setback, from the minor, relatively trivial things that happen day to day to major life-changing or traumatic events. And our ability to deal with and recover from life's inevitable challenges affects our health and well-being, our work and enjoyment and quality of life. With what we've been going through the last few years, I think it's fair to say we all need to build our own resilience, and if we can, that of others. So Dr. Sam Harvey, a psychiatrist with the Black Dog Institute here in Australia, commenting on resilience, said that it's one way we can all reduce our stress at work and contribute to a more mentally healthy workplace. He also noted, and this is something I think is so important to keep in mind, resilience is not something you either have or don't have. It's not a magical quality. It's not an inbuilt trait. In other words, it's something we can learn, something we can practice, something we can help others learn, perhaps by our own example and modelling in the workplace, the home front, and in our communities. Now, one thing I want to stress, and I'm going to come back to this later in the webinar, if you've been back on a plane lately, they're still doing those safety demonstrations. And one of the key things they talk about is, if it's necessary, the oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling and you must put your oxygen mask on yourself before you try and help anyone around you. So what I want to emphasize as I go through this webinar today, I would like you to take this quite personally. I would like you to be thinking about how, I know you're here because of your altruism and your good intention, your good heart, and your desire to help other people, your mentors, your mentees. But please fit your own mask first. Be looking in every bit of information, in every slide you see, be looking and asking yourself and noting down for yourself, how can I use this myself? What can I use? What can I do? What could I do differently? What could I do more in order to build my own resilience? And this is not a selfish thing I'm asking of you. It's an important thing. As they say on the aeroplane, you can't help other people if you're unconscious. If you are stressed, if you are struggling, you are less able. You are less able to do your own work well. You are less able to perform at optimum levels, and you are less able to be of service and assistance to those around you. So I urge you to take that approach today. So as Dr. Sam Harvey said, it's not an inborn resilience is not a trait. It is not a magical quality. It's a set of things that you can learn. And I've classified these, broadly speaking, into three areas. Resilience thinking. So what can we do with our mental capacity, our thoughts, to build our resilience? Strategies, what general things can we do? And then behaviours, what specific things, if you like, strategy and tactics, if that works for you. But these are the three main areas I'll be focusing on today. In this webinar, I've broken it down into four areas. We're going to talk about the Goldilocks level of challenge for optimum performance, a focus on workplace, but it works in other aspects as well. We're going to talk about some of the workplace challenges and how you can respond rather than react to those. We're going to talk about I want to spend most of my time focusing on the thinking and behaviours and actions that can help you build resilience, and that you can help other people learn for their resilience. But before we get to all of that, I want to talk about when to put ideas of resilience aside, because I got quite concerned as I revisited the material from my book in order to develop this webinar. And I thought, you know, there's actually something missing. And I confess it's not in the book, but it is important. So I want to focus first on when to put ideas of resilience aside. And I'll just tell you that there are the times to put resilience aside can be times when we're really feeling quite frayed. We're kind of hanging on by very tenuously there. And when I wrote this book, Advanced Mentoring Skills, Taking Your Conversations to the Next Level, I was in hotel quarantine in Hong Kong in 2021. The Australian government had finally opened its borders, and I was keen to meet a brand new grandchild. Well, she wasn't brand new at that stage. She was about a year old. And I also wanted to see my daughter, who lives in Hong Kong, and she'd done it really tough. She had a toddler, a pregnancy, gave birth, had complications, had illness and injury. And her husband is a pilot, and he was still flying, and he was away a lot. And he was obviously doing quarantine a lot as well. So when I was writing about resilience, you know, it was with a sense of relief, I suppose, but I didn't realize then that COVID-19 had not yet released us from its grip. It was not just the virus, the restrictions, the economic impact. It was the ongoing grinding stress of uncertainty that took its toll on all of us, even those like me who are very, very lucky. And it's still not over. I know we don't want to admit it, some of us, but it's not. We're adapting, ignoring, or suffering, depending on our circumstances, and I guess our resilience to some extent. But I don't think we should let resilience be some, you know, yet another thing we kind of get all judgy about, and especially not something we beat ourselves up about not having enough when it comes to, you know, sometimes having a hard time coping with everything. And I also want to say, and I know some of you in different countries have had different levels of experiences of this, but I can only speak from the Australian experience, where we have had fires, floods, as well as the pandemic and the economic situation as well. I know we're more fortunate than many other countries, but I just want to say, people who have experienced devastating circumstances, be there fire, floods, storms, you know, earthquakes. Our brothers and sisters in New Zealand just had another earthquake, and Indonesia. So people who are experiencing these sorts of traumas need help, not resilience, not buzzwords, not a lot of the things I'm going to talk about. They need physical, practical help. So I don't want to take away from any of that by anything I say here today. And I also think something else that has really emerged in the last couple of years is for mentoring, and this is really relevant to mentoring, we need to equip ourselves to support other people in trouble. In Australia, again, I can't speak to other countries' experience, but in Australia, we lose 8 or 9 people a day to suicide. There's an Australian suicide prevention charity called Are You OK? And it's launching a program to encourage young people to reach out when they are struggling. Their research shows that 7 out of 10 people are reluctant to reach out when they know they are in trouble. And they don't reach out to their loved ones. And those who seek to help, who would help them, even when they do reach out, some of us really lack the skills, and we feel uncertain about how to actually help them out. So Are You OK's program is called Friend Better, Tips to Help Your Mates. So it's aimed at young people, but I'm sure we could all learn from it. And I also need to tell you that I'm not an expert in this area. And I feel it's one you want to address with your mentors. And I think you could consider providing training and resources and look into alliances with specialist organisations. So I'd love to hear your feedback and your comments about what you are already doing, because I know many of you would be facing this already. I'm also going to actually put in a link in the chat box now. Just bear with me while I get this link. It's a very long link, so you'd need to copy and paste if you're interested in this. This is, again, Australia, but they're doing a webinar. And I assume that will be available pretty much wherever you are, although the timing may or may not work for you. But the link is there, so copy and paste that. This is from the Australian Human Resources Institute, and they are partnering. As I said, this is a good time to partner and get yourself this expertise, this expert input for yourself, but also for your mentors. This is definitely an area that we need to be looking at incorporating. So again, research shows nearly 1 in 6 Australian workers experience a significant level of mental ill health in a 4-week period. The recognition of the critical role work plays in mental health has led policymakers to demand more of organisations in managing the risks associated with psychosocial hazards. So I do urge you to take a look at this webinar, this sort of information. See what resources you can access in your own local area and reach out for that expertise, because I can only talk in the most generic of terms and in the context of mentoring. So in that context, in the general context of mentoring, I can say there are times when we need to put this idea of resilience aside, and I am looking for your comments, so type in at any time. I'll pause in a moment for your comments or questions on this. But I really think that there are times when we could quit being stoic, you know, the sort of British, and I was born in England, so the British stiff upper lip, you know, the holding it all in, holding it all together. And often when we're in a kind of a caring role, a caring profession even, we feel that need to have our stuff together and keep it together. But there are times, I believe, when we should quit being stoic, you know, let other people look after us, give ourselves some time out, shut the door, go to bed, cry, binge on TV, or even comfort food or whatever within reason helps you get through. We also need to be very wary of overwork. I think that's something that's snuck up. I think it's always been a bit of a problem, but I suspect it's snuck up a bit more in the last few years as well. Overload at home, as well as the workplace, unreasonable demands by other people, or things we actually put on ourselves that perhaps we need not. I believe we need to prioritise that self-care. And again, I remind you of the safety demonstration on the aeroplane. Fit your own mask before you try and help other people. So prioritise your self-care. Look after your well-being in the ways that suit you and the ways that work best for you. And if you do, the dividend that pays off is, if you want to, it gives you that capacity to be able to look after other people. I think it's a good time also to review and upgrade your time management techniques, strategies, knowledge. You know, talking about priorities, that's the key to time management. What are your priorities? This is not a webinar on time management, but certainly it's something that adds to our stress and adds to that overload. Time management isn't the solution to everything, but it's worth taking a look. I also believe it's a time to look at your negotiation skills. because sometimes that workload, that overload, can be a result of not being able to negotiate what is really fair and equitable in your home, in your community, and in the workplace as well. So in terms of resilience, it's not always the answer. Sometimes some of these other things may be the answer. And again, I urge you to take this from a personal point of view. And I'd love to know, as you look at that list, maybe take a screenshot if you want to, or maybe note it down. And I'd love you to come back and think about, well, you know, which of these maybe do I need to think about a bit more? I think now is also a really good time to revisit a powerful concept described by Stephen Covey in his classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I say this every time I show you this diagram. This is a classic book. It should be on your bookshelf. In fact, more than that, you should be taking it off your bookshelf and having a read of it, because this model is just so useful. This might be the single most useful model I've ever come across. So it's worthy of, and you can get more information online if you can't get hold of the book. There's lots of stuff out there, but in a nutshell, the outer circle represents all the things that you are concerned about. You know, and it could be an upcoming performance review. It could be your credit card bill. It could be how your child is doing at school, or the difficult person you deal with at work, all the stuff you're concerned about. And then the control principle talks about the inner circle. Because the inner circle is those things you have most control or most influence over. Now, the trick to this is, if you're putting a lot of energy and attention and effort into your circle of concern, it just gets bigger and bigger and you can get totally overwhelmed. But if you instead focus on those things you have most control over, reduce your focus to your circle of influence, put your energy, your attention, your effort into that, it means that it will become bigger. You can make a difference. You can become stronger and increase your influence. And this can happen slowly, gradually, or it might happen really fast. But knowing the difference between what you can control and what you can't control will reduce your stress and empower you, and focusing what you can do will build resilience. And this is reflected in the words attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas. Grant me the strength to change the things I can. See, circle of control, circle of influence, change the things I can. The equanimity to accept the things I can't. I can't do everything. I can't change everything. And the wisdom to know the difference. And this makes all the difference. So looking for comments, questions, observations. Not seeing any at the moment. I'll come back and have a look at that again. In the meantime, I'm going to plow on here because I've got a lot of content to get through. The next bit is this idea of the Goldilocks level of challenge for optimum performance. And I'm hoping most of you will have some familiarity with the story of Goldilocks, a little girl who goes into the forest. It's a nursery story, you know, and she finds a cottage that belongs to the 3 bears. The 3 bears are out, and she sees the porridge on the table, 3 bowls of porridge. She tries one, it's too hot. She tries another, it's too cold. And then she finds the one that's just right. And so on and so forth. So I hope you know that story. But that's the concept we're going to be working with here in this segment. And we've known for a long time there is we can't avoid all stress, and nor do we want to. According to the Yerkes-Dodson law for peak performance, there is an optimal and constructive level of stress. Too much and we burn out, but too little and we rust out. So we want to, and there's a tension there and a balance between our comfort zone, if you like, and anxiety. And we want that to find that balance that will give us the optimum performance. So in terms of our actual work, the tasks that we do, looking at our capabilities. If we have tasks that are beyond our capabilities, it is anxiety provoking. So balance means striking the balance between what is beyond our capabilities and makes us anxious and what's below our capabilities and makes us bored. You know, that can be as bad for us. So as I said in the previous diagram, rust out or burnout. We want neither. We want to find that Goldilocks balance. We also need to think about some trends. You know, this is workplace based, and the workforce coming into the workplace now may have been subjected, some of them at least, to what used to be called helicopter parenting. And this is where we kind of hover, the parent hovers over the child, keeping an eye on everything, not letting them fall over, not letting them get into trouble. That's actually being replaced by lawnmower parenting. Don't you love these labels, where the parents actually go there out in front of them and mow and make everything smooth, so there's no danger for them whatsoever. Now, this comes from a good place. It comes from a desire to be a good parent, but smoothing out all of the obstacles so kids never experience rough ground or challenges does not prepare them for the realities of work. Now, I know I've seen lots of really good playground designs now where that's sort of more of an adventure. I see video of my grandchildren in Hong Kong being taken to playrooms and playgrounds, and they're doing quite adventurous things that would have had my heart in my mouth. But I'm really proud of my daughter and son-in-law as they keep the kids safe, but they also allow them to climb on these things and encourage them to this kind of adventurous play that prepares them for the realities of life and makes them physically, mentally, and emotionally strong. Now, bringing this back to mentoring, we want to again, and it's a Goldilocks balance for the kids growing up. You don't want them getting hurt or seriously hurt, but you don't want to wrap them in cotton wool either. Bringing this back to mentoring, you've seen this model many times before. I call it the mentoring dynamic, and explains the kind of and this is not so much balance. We don't want to occupy the center. We want to actually have enough balance that we can actually move from one to the other. Yes, we want to support, encourage, and validate our mentees. And if I were drawing this, I'd write a big and in the middle of this. And we want to challenge them. Once we've won their trust, once we've got rapport, we want to challenge them by providing a different perspective, another way of seeing things. We don't want them in their comfort zone all the time. We want them to move out into the learning zone. Again, looking at the vertical, we ask questions, we listen, we draw them out. We want them to do a lot of the talking, especially in the beginning. And when it's appropriate, we want to be able to impart our wisdom, to share our knowledge and experience. So it's kind of a bit Goldilocks there too. So again, I'm just looking, questions, comments, observations. Not seeing any there. Please do. I'd love your feedback on this. We're going to move on to workplace challenges. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to comment on the sorts of challenges your mentees bring to you. Obviously, I've got some from workplaces I experienced and consulted in for many years. but they may be quite different if you're in an academic setting or a community setting, a not-for-profit, something like that. So do prepare to share some of the challenges as we then start to talk about responding. I want to, with the risk of kind of taking this this metaphor too far, a bit of the Goldilocks in this area as well. We kind of need to think about it when it comes to decision making and effective decision making and risk aversion. Now, when we're making decisions, we don't want too much risk aversion. Again, we don't want the helicopter or the lawnmower parenting approach. That would be too much risk aversion, because then we get no decisions in the workplace. We fall into analysis paralysis. But if we have too little risk aversion, that can be dangerous too. If it's kind of too thoughtless, risk-taking can become dangerous and reckless. So again, we've got to find a way to strike a balance. And our approach to risk is not just a question of courage, or some would say foolhardiness. It's actually a question of considering consequences. So as a mentor, you can help your mentee figure out potential consequences of any action and whether potential benefits outweigh possible negatives. Experience allows us to develop risk tolerance. If we've coped with adversity in the past and got through some tough times, we may meet new challenges feeling more confident that we can deal with them. So in a conversation with a mentee that helps them figure out potential consequences of any action and whether the benefits outweigh the negatives, you can ask them, when have you faced a challenge before? So you want answers that come from them wherever possible. You could say, what helped you get through that? How could you apply those tactics in this situation? We know as mentors, answers and solutions that come from the mentee themselves are more likely to be acted on and more likely to be right for them. And we balance that with talking about consequences. So what are some of the challenges that mentees bring to you to discuss? I'm going to share some of the ones that are fairly typical, but I'd love to know yours as well. So in the corporate workplace where I operated for most of my career, huge change, always happening, mergers, getting a new boss, changing jobs, redundancies, I hate to say it, but bullying, racism, sexism, ageism, bias of any kind, discrimination. These are the sort of things that mentees would bring up. Poor management. So working to a boss or a leader who was ineffective would be a source of challenge for many mentees, as was team members who don't pull their weight. And again, put this on yourself. Remember, we're fitting our own mask too first. So think about how many of these have you dealt with recently? Are any of these affecting you at the moment? Technology. It's a constant race to keep up with technology. I have the luxury of now deciding, what do I need to learn to keep up? What do I not need to learn at this stage of my life? And yet there's still a lot that I have to still learn and come to grips with. What are we going to do with artificial intelligence? What do I need to do in this area? And you would be facing that as well. Now, not seeing any comments coming in. That's okay. I'll just keep going. One of the things that we need to understand, going back again to Dr. Sam, who said it's not a trait. Resilience is not a trait. It's something you can learn. And just like physical strength, mental strength does require, it's like resilience is like a muscle. We do have to build that strength over time. We don't just get it like that. And it is a combination of thinking, strategies and actions or behaviours. And just like building muscle strength, it does take work. There are ways you can build resilience through your thinking and actions and behaviour. So build it. So I'm going to talk about those very shortly. But first, I just want to say we can use these strengths as we build them. We can use them reactively. So in the moment, like a surfer on a wave, reacting to what is actually going on in that very moment. So we can use our skills, our strengths reactively to cope with what's going on around us, deal with the immediate circumstances. But like that surfer, we need those skills in the first place. I could not go out on a wave tomorrow or today and react in any sort of positive way without those skills. We can use our strengths proactively. So we can learn self-management and use that proactively. And this will prevent or certainly reduce the risk of stuff that's going to give us more strength, more stress. And we can also, if we live our lives like this, we can become creative by influencing ourselves, using that circle of influence, firstly on ourselves, then on the people that are closest to us, influencing, and then on the wider world to shape a positive future. So I'm about to get into the how-tos here, those thinking, behaviours and actions. So, oops, what's happened here? Just if you've got any questions, do let them come in now. Okay, so I'm first going to talk about resilience thinking. And what I mean by that is choosing thoughts that serve us better, using in the moment coping thinking strategies. So what can I do right now that will actually help me cope with what's going on in the moment? Now, you do need to be proactive and plan and practice these skills so that they become your default in times of challenge. So many of us have been told, you know, breathe, just take the deep breath. When we're frightened, when we're really stressed in the moment, you know, the heart pumps and the breathing becomes shallow in the top of the lungs. And this keeps us in that crisis mode. And what we need to do is take a deep breath, take it right down to the bottom of our lungs and breathe out, and doing that 2 or 3 times. If that's the only thing you can do, that will help you in the moment. It may also help you kind of get your head into gear to use some of the other in the moment things. You can be present in the moment, and it's not always possible, but you may be able to look around in this situation and say, well, what is good? What is going well right now? It seems like everything's chaos, but in reality, in most, I'm talking about everyday situations, life, there will be some things that are good and some things that are going well. You know, that technique, before you go to bed at night, before you go to sleep, you write in your journal 3 things you're grateful for. And this is an amazing strategy for keeping you resilient when things are really tough. It often helps to look at the past. What have you coped with previously? What did you do then? What helped you get through that? That will help you get through this, even if it's just knowing, hey, I am still here. I am still okay. If I got through that, I can get through this. So just remembering that. Going back to that circle of concern, circle of influence. What can I control? What can my breathing, what I say to myself inside my head, what do I say out loud? What do I think? Remembering that you have a limited area. You can't do everything. Know the difference between what you can do and what you can't. Shift your brain into problem-solving mode. So start thinking, what's the outcome you want? What's in the way? What can you do differently to progress? Chunk big problems down into smaller, more manageable pieces. I can't change that, but I can, this is big, but this bit is little. And once I've done that little bit, I can do this little bit. And don't let yourself fall into kind of all or nothing thinking. If sometimes when our way is blocked, we kind of catastrophize and think, oh, I'm doomed. Try to think of obstacles as obstacles or simply setbacks. They're not insurmountable problems. We always have difficulties, and life is seldom smooth sailing. In fact, I'm not a sailor, but I have observed on a sailboat, they're constantly tacking to catch the wind. They're zigzagging to get to where they want. They're very seldom heading in exactly the direction they want to go. They're zigzagging along the way. So think of obstacles and setbacks like that. I've got to tack. I've got to reconfigure my sails to get to where I want to go. Now, the other thing I think we need to learn is compassion, being kind to other people and also being kind to ourselves. Make this kind of our default setting. This is our North Star. So look at ways to silence or at least, redirect your inner critic. If you've got one of those, it's always criticizing you, and check that self-talk, that negative self-talk, those things you say to yourself, little insults and self-inflicted put-downs. You wouldn't speak to anyone else like that. So why would you speak to yourself that way? So turn up the volume, hear it, and then go, hang on a minute. I don't talk to other people like that. Why am I talking to myself like that? Often we have imposter syndrome, where we think, oh my God, people don't realize, they're going to see through me. I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. So be kind to yourself. So here's a quick summary. This is the model that's in the book. Your resilience thinking, and we need to train and practice these, looking in present, in the moment, past. What can you control? Shifting to problem-solving mode, breaking a problem down into chunks. Look our attitude towards setbacks and being kind to ourself. So the next little chunk of this is a strategy, and in particular, resilience strategies of connect. And we know that survivors have good social connections. So make sure that you nourish your vital relationships. I hope you're developing a to-do list for yourself here. Make time for coffee. Make time for phone calls and other catch-ups. Don't constantly put socializing off because you're too busy. And do remember that younger people prefer texting, and a lot of people my age or in between, are getting much more into the habit of texting as a legitimate way of staying in touch. It's quick, it's easy. People can see your text. They can respond when they're ready or not. At least they know you're there. They know you care. So do take the time out for that. Make sure you're reaching out to your network. And when you're in trouble, people say, let me know if there's anything I can do. Well, if someone said that to you lately, ask. Be specific. Let them know what you really need. And it might be, I just need to blow off steam. I need a shoulder to cry on. I need someone to listen and not give advice. Tell them. So talk to people. Now, if you don't hold it all in, if you've got a trusted friend or colleague that you can confide in, And if you don't, or if the matter is too serious, reach out to professionals. We are fortunate in Australia, most large organisations have what they call an employee assistance scheme. So there are trained professionals that your organisation can put you in touch with so you can have a confidential conversation. If you don't have that, then I do urge you to maybe talk to your general practitioner, your doctor, and see if you can get in touch with a psychologist or a professional who is someone. Now, if you're in a caring profession, it may be that you have a supervisor with whom you have that confidential conversation on a regular basis. So make sure that you can do that. The other thing is this idea that's called self-nurturing. And this is where, again, you prioritize looking after your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And I learned about self-nurturing from a rape counsellor who I met at a conference, and she did a session on self-nurturing because she learned to take care of herself after she watched so many of her colleagues burn out. And you can only imagine working in these fields, doing such good work, but it takes its toll. So she decided to prioritize herself by self-nurturing, and she found, and she had a whole suite of things that nurtured her in these 4 areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So choose what works for you, be it meditation, yoga, running, art, massage, hobbies, whatever relaxes you, strengthens you, and brings you pleasure or respite. Then build it into your life every day if you can, but certainly every week. And remember, it's not an indulgence to look after yourself. It's actually a necessity. Now, another thing you can do is in terms of your goals. Make sure you're setting realistic goals. Sometimes we set goals that are too big, too optimistic, and so forth. And there are people who swear by doing that because it stretches you. If you're doing that, make sure you are chunking it into the smaller bits that you can actually realistically make progress in, and celebrate your achievements. At the end of every day, I implore you, at the end of every day, review what you have accomplished. Instead of beating yourself up, I don't know about you, but my to-do list, even these days, gets longer. As fast as I cross things off, something else is jumping on. And instead of beating yourself up about what you did not accomplish, celebrate what you did accomplish. And as long as these things were the higher priority things, you've got nothing to be ashamed of. So celebrate. Celebrate your achievements. Also focus on strengths. Your best results, and I've talked about this in many previous webinars devoted to focusing on strengths. All my mentoring books talk about building strengths, developing strengths, and managing weakness. We can't be terrific in every area, but we do get our best results when we develop our strengths and find workarounds to manage our weaknesses. Bring them to a level, we can work on them to bring them to an acceptable level, but any investment over and above what is absolutely necessary to perform in our job is better spent in our areas of strength and areas of weakness. And we all need a sense of purpose. So finding the meaning in your work, how does it help others? How does it make the world a better place? When you contribute to something you care about or align with your values, it gives you that sense of meaning and purpose that we all need. If you're not doing something you love in your job, Make sure you do it in your own time, as a volunteer, as a hobby, or with the people that you love. Is there a cause that you believe in? Can you contribute to something that feels worthwhile? Do you have a personal purpose for your life? So here's a summary of resilience strategies. And I'd like you to look at these things and see which of these you need to strengthen for your own well-being and resilience. I'm hoping that there are some to-do lists being developed. I'll ask when we come to the end of our content in a few minutes. Okay, so there's a question here. Can too much reflecting lead to overthinking? And Carolyn says, still not sure definition of overthinking either. Yeah. And I guess that's another Goldilocks moment, isn't it? We don't want to get caught in analysis paralysis. There is a balance between reflecting so we can get lessons and going, okay, that's enough reflecting, time to get into action. If you look at adult learning and action learning, which my model of the mentoring conversation is built on, action learning, adult learning, it is a cycle of reflection and action. And so there's a balance to be found there. I guess it's different for each of us, and individuals have a different, I don't want to say bias, but almost a personality. A lot of us are very action oriented, and business life and work has a tendency to make us to want us to be action oriented and get things done. And sometimes that means we're not taking that time out for reflection. And some of us, by our nature, our personality, tend to be more reflective, and that can lead to procrastination. I know, because that is my natural tendency. I tend to reflect too much and tend to procrastinate way too much. So it's a matter of having the self-discipline. Am I procrastinating on this? Am I overthinking of this? And only you can kind of come up with the answer to that and where your particular Goldilocks balance lies. Okay, last little bit is a little bit, because I'm just going to talk in kind of overview terms. Really, resilience is about self-regulation, choosing your response rather than reacting. Recognizing the fight, flight, freeze reaction, the stress response, fight, flight, freeze, in yourself and in others, and thinking about its impact, managing yourself and influencing others by example. Be the person who can, take the deep breath in a difficult situation. That's what it needs. It needs a few seconds for the frontal cortex, the executive brain here behind your forehead, to override that primitive part of your brain in the back there, that instantaneous emotional response. Takes a few seconds for the executive brain to kick in there. That's why the deep breath is good. Before you let anything fly out of your mouth, before you join, lower the temperature. So you choose your response rather than the instant reaction. It means, and again, you need to be proactive, always doing this, constantly building your communication skills. So you can listen to other people, even when it's hard, even when you feel that emotion kind of bubbling up. You can take the breath and you can listen and you can respond rather than escalate the situation. And you can be assertive rather than aggressive, when you speak. And above all, you maintain flexibility. You decide when and how to adjust, perhaps accommodate someone else's needs, and when to stand your ground, when to back down, and when to leave. Particularly in the workplace, you know, it's not smart to always speak up when you see something wrong. You've got to make a judgment call when you stand up and call something out, and when it's wiser to hold off. And that's something, again, only you can decide. So there you have it, our content. We talked about those 4 areas, and I'm very keen to know what your key takeaways and actions are. A quick reminder that we still have a lot of webinars coming up for you. If you're in the live webinar today, you will receive an invitation that you may share. If you are watching a recording, why don't you sign up to get the invitations and newsletter, etc. And our next webinar is Build Trust. So that's a very helpful one in any scenario. Again, I'll be sending you more information about the book on which this webinar was based, The Advanced Mentoring Skills, Taking Your Conversations to the Next Level, which comes with a package of 12 video masterclasses. So Julie's got a takeaway there. Remember to breathe. If you do nothing else, remember to breathe. And you know what? When you remember to breathe, that's going to remember you need to fit that oxygen mask for yourself so that you can help. Oh, thanks, Sandra. That's great to hear. So I will stick around for questions. We've got 4 or 5 minutes left on the clock. Kathy's going to do some more self-nurturing. Yeah, that's a whole field in itself. Look it up because you'll get there's plenty of good information that will be really helpful in this area. All right, so Beatrice got a good question here. Okay, so good feedback here. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Thanks, Lisa. Print the resilience strategy, so a slide so I can look at it daily. Kathy will be doing more self-nurturing. Elizabeth, acknowledge achievements each day rather than what you did not do. That is so important, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you're taking that away. Now, Beatrice's question. What if self-care is viewed as an indulgence rather than a necessity? Do you know, many years ago, I was so fortunate. I got to run 3-day career development workshops for women. And I'm so grateful to the organisation. It was, at the time, it was called the New South Wales Roads and Traffic Authority. Now I think it's called Transport for New South Wales. Hats off to them. 3 days, women, career development. It was fabulous. But we did look at this self-nurturing because back then, and I think it's still valid today, women tend to be the carers, the nurturers of other people, whether it's our kids, whether it's our elders. They talk about the sandwich generation, the women caught in the sandwich. They've got young kids and they've got elderly parents or even parents-in-law that they take the responsibility on. So we talked about self-nurturing, and I remember working with a group, and there was one particular woman in the group who just could not get her head around. She should make herself a priority. She had a young family, she worked full time, and she just could not bring herself to the headspace that says, I need to look after me. So I took a different tack with her. I sat down beside her and I said, okay, I get it. Your value is this. It's not right to put yourself first. So don't. Now, this is a risk, but it's meeting people where they're at. You can't persuade someone who has this tightly held belief and value. So I said, don't do it for yourself. Do it for them. She told me about her young child and their needs. She told me about her partner and their needs. She told me about all these other things. I said, don't self-nurture, because we were coming up with strategies. What can you do that nurtures you, and how can you build that into your life? And she couldn't get past the word go. So I said, do it for your child so you can look after them better. Do it for your partner so there's more of you to give to them. Do it for this important work that you do in your community and so forth. Don't do it for yourself. Do it because it's necessary for them. And there was an infinitesimal, I can't say the word, but a tiny, tiny, tiny shift in her attitude. Once she wasn't able to say, I need to do this for me. She was able to say, I need to do this for them. And then she was able to come up with some things that she could do, self-nurturing things, not because it was good for her, not because she deserved it or needed it, but because it was, again, service to them. So that would be my answer, Beatrice. When self-care is viewed as an indulgence rather than necessity, if you really can't get past that, then don't. Come at it from the other point of view, that it's necessary in order to perform at peak levels at work, in order to care and give your best to others. And also look at some of the things that, okay, soaking in a hot tub of with beautiful bath salts and things like that might be seen as a self-indulgence, but there are a lot of other things. Reading a novel, just sitting for a moment with a cup of tea, and instead of having that cup of tea while you're working, step away from the keyboard and go sit in a comfortable chair and make yourself a cup of tea in a beautiful china cup and saucer, or whatever your thing is. And it doesn't need to be a whole day a week. It could be 3 minutes. It could be, stepping outside to take some fresh air. It could be stepping away from your desk at lunchtime and going for a walk. So there are lots of things that really you could do that are not necessarily self-indulgent, but that are indeed self-nurturing. Okay. Yeah, okay, lots of good comments. Okay, I'm going to switch the recording off now. I will stick around, more comments and more messages coming in, so I'll stick around. If you're watching the recording, do join us on live webinars in future, and hope to see you there. Do sign up for the invitations. Okay, thanks for watching the recording. Stick around if you are on the live show.